Ah, sì.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you had a very nice evening last night. Yesterday you were in theme sessions discussing your planned progress for the rest of the first phase of Macsur and considered possible opportunities to grapple in a follow-up phase going from 2015 to 2017. And this is now an opportunity for the themes to report back not only what happened in their session about what their plans are within the themes so that the other themes know, but also what your plans are for the cross-cutting activities. And we'll go in the usual order: Prop and Light and Trader. Prop M will be the first. Got 15 minutes, and I'll give you a signal when that time is up.
Thank you, Martin. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to give a little summary of the program session. Well, I'm not going to jump into too many details. You can read the abstracts to the presentation, but I'll try to give you some major analysis. If you look at the extremes of what we have seen, we have gone through a whole range of highly specialized presentations. We have seen subjects ranging from single process-based models up to a whole ensemble of models. We went from this one model validated up to the range of even uncalibrated ensembles of models. One model was a point model, so we looked at the scale. This was just a single point on the grid, up to a range of the grids going up to the scale of 10,000 square kilometers. So we really had a broad range of subjects. From the detail of the process, we went from the range even from the Parkour model up to statistical learning approach. So really different approaches were shown. Now, most of the presentations yesterday were really methodological, not much on the application side, but more on the method. So we really want to know how we can describe processes. And the underlying subject of the area where do we really need more models was in the back of mind. So Edwin said something like, everyone will measure data except the one who made it, but nobody will the model except the one who ran it. So in the back of the mind. If we have a look at what these presentations were addressed on, we had 3 presentations on data, one on the model, one on proper patients, very classic, 2 on climate change, 1 on uncertainty, and 2 on the framework or integrated model. Well, we have to look on a different way and also see that 4 of them were addressed on environmental issues, in this case on nitrate leaching and N2O emissions. This was 40% of the presentation. Also, it's always interesting to see what kind of crops were in the focal. We had not only winter wheat, but also silage mix, oilseed rape, wine, and of course the crop rotation, which was a real challenge for most modeling teams with a huge variety of crops. And if we now go to some more details, well, we had first response to the economist's wish list. So there's an increase in communication different themes of Macsur. Then we had the main focus on the data handling. We have seen that the data aggregation is still a very important subject. In this case, the data aggregation of input data for our models, to see what happens to the probable output then, but also what kind of uncertainty is related to that. Edwin tried to quantify the uncertainty coming from parameters versus the input data uncertainty, in this case for nitrate leaching. And on the nitrate leaching side, also on the NO emission, we've seen from Jordan Olson that we can describe some processes, but in this case also we have an increasing need for empirical evidence to show this. And what we also see in this projection that was shown, something we will also see that the main effects are coming up in the middle of the century. We go into the future. Then on the other hand, we have a highly interesting presentation on model complexity and statistical learning approaches. So this was one new way to move away from process-based models, but also to describe the process by statistical approaches. And then another thing we have seen is we have an increasing number of ensembles, and I'm not sure if they're still there, like for example the pharmacologists, which are very used to use ensembles. How can we benchmark these ensembles? But I've just learned from Raymond that there are first papers being produced, written in ACMAP and Macsur to exactly address that. And then finally we had a framework on the application side. Italy using making a decision support system with real-time input data, with the database running the models in terms of decisions, using, for example, drones flying, making tomographies and giving this data directly to this framework. So this was something sounded up. And if we break it down, we have again 10 very highly specialized presentations on very different things. We can also see, like from the data side and also from the ensemble side, that we have very much increasing interaction between the different teams. So there's increasing communication. And if we now look into knowledge curve, you might guess where we are. I think we're still in a steep curve, the steep part and our exponential phase rising up. And therefore there's really the need for a second phase to complete this. But I think this comes along with increasing interaction that we're on a good way to go there.
Do you have any questions to the crop and representative? Okay, then we'll go on to Lifetime. Thank you.
Okay, so you can ignore the slide for a second, because the slide's very based on the discussion we had about the cross-cutting themes and diagrams into them, so they're kind of a diagrammatic description of what we talked about. So ignore that for a minute. We had some very varied and interesting presentations through the morning yesterday, and I kind of mentioned those in the opening talk I gave at the beginning of the week, so I won't go over that again. The discussions in the afternoon centred on what Live would like to do in part 2 from Macsur, and we looked basically that's around 2 work packages, one of them around livestock production and livestock productivity, particularly animal health, animal diseases and the natural diseases, looking at the interface between animal health and greenhouse gas emissions, looking at things like feed, roots and those other aspects of productivity, how to increase resource use efficiency. The second work package we're looking at is to bring our grassland modelling, farm scale modelling together into a single work package that encourages a kind of synthesis between those different aspects. In terms of grassland, looking at modelling the vulnerability of different grassland systems to climate change, it's also focused on developing capacity and modelling grassland quality as well as just the quantity. And bringing that together, looking at how the farm scale and grassland models can work.
Take the microphone near the mouth because we don't hear.
Sorry, I'll speak louder.
Yes, he's sleepy.
Yeah. So am I, that's the problem, probably. Okay, so that was our discussion in terms of the next stage of Macsur within LIVA. So really focusing on productivity and farm scale and grassland modelling. We then went on to have a look at our ideas and input to the cost-cutting work packages and cost-cutting aspects. So, firstly, we looked at the stakeholders and the interactions with stakeholders. And basically these mind maps, you can look at them now, indicate what people in LIVA were basically saying were their interests, what they were saying were the issues to address, and what inputs we might like to have to them. So we kind of had quite an open discussion. So in terms of stakeholder interactions, we were looking at this idea that we can develop, and Giovanna and the colleagues have been developing frameworks and tools for stakeholder involvement that are transferable across different farming systems in different regions. And when we're looking at stakeholders, looking not just at interacting with farmers directly, but interacting also with the professionals who advise and interact with farmers, and training directed at them, and including people like veterinarians who are specific to the livestock sector. And we're also thinking of different ways of communicating our ideas in terms of online learning and new technology and how that can be used. We talked about knowledge exchange and the importance of that being in both directions, both from us communicating our outputs and also to us from policymakers and other stakeholders, giving us focus and helping us keep our outputs relevant. We also talked about the issue of documenting success in terms of stakeholder interactions and the facts and looking at how interactions can alter behaviour. So in a lot of cases, monitoring outcomes of those interactions with stakeholders isn't a clear process. It might be a long-term impact that it's had, or short-term changes might revert in the future. So that's an area of interest for us to develop. For example, looking at stakeholder behaviour in pilot versus non-pilot communities. We had a look at uncertainty and scaling. Quite a few of the interesting things are linked to scaling, because obviously farm scale modelling sits in the middle of crop modelling and the regional modelling efforts. We discussed the fact that modelling is sometimes not at the best scale to answer a particular question, but might be just at the scale where data are available, so they're not too low. We looked at the options for adaptation and mitigation and how they vary with farm size. how do you aggregate those? How do you take account of factors that only come into play at higher levels? So elements of regulation and things like the Water Framework Directive. We discussed the idea as well that stakeholders can be important data holders. Particular farmers, there's a lot of data held on farm, and that might be an interesting source of information when we're looking at modelling. There might be some issues with that in terms of self-selecting bias. Invested farmers. Okay, and farmers may also be better at estimating some things rather than others, so maybe costs rather than the amount of different resources used. And also there's the whole area of techniques for addressing modelling uncertainty that the grassland modellers have been taking the lead in, and that we can contribute at the overall scale. In terms of toolbox and infrastructure, there are some ideas, Daniel will have some interesting points to make about the resources that can be developed, the importance of having programmatic rather than GUI interface resources, the importance of when models are made available online, that there's control of the version, so that it's very difficult to do meta-analysis with models or rerun and replicate model findings if the versions have been updated since the talks were published. We then went on to talk about regional pilots and farmers' interest, potentially from Belgium and from the UK, described by Nick as the Wet West, and the recognition really that would need funding from national levels through projects and then to be carried out using Macsur networks and methods. And there was the suggestion that at the regional pilot level and case study level, we might want to broaden our outlook beyond the dairy sector to different livestock species. We went on then to look at the cross-cutting case studies associated with specific topics in Europe. Firstly, the animal feed topic. Certainly forage quality, both grasses and crops, came out as an important component of this. The idea of requiring and needing protein self-sufficiency in livestock systems within the EU for food security. Looking at changes in feed balance to get intensification, so more efficient use of inputs, but also to achieve that sustainably. And then going on towards trade, the economics of systems transitions, so changing to new feeding regimes and different aspects of that. Another suggested topic for cross-cutting case studies has been mitigation. There was a point made that models farm scale often make assumptions about how human diet changes with external conditions in socio-economic scenarios and so forth. There's also some concern that many initiatives are directed at mitigation, so is there the space for us to do anything different? So that was a more questionable area. What I've been thinking about is this idea that, in fact, farm scale, where LIFEM is quite strong, is a very natural level to interact with stakeholders, particularly farmers. And then if we can look at vulnerability to climate change, mitigation aspects, animal disease, crops and so forth, that farm scale might be a really interesting place to do that. That we develop a tool that brings together different aspects that we've been looking at to apply on a particular farm level to look at the vulnerability of that farming system. So I think that's kind of our broad suggestion, broad idea from that. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions to LIFEM? then we'll continue with the trade-in.
Shall we have a space for general comments at the end? Yeah.
So good morning, everybody. It is about learning, and yesterday I learned that it's possible to explain and demonstrate solving parabolic partial difference equations within 15 minutes and demonstrating their application within 15 minutes, I said. And I'm trying to give you an overview of what we were discussing during the last 2 days, also in 15 minutes, and this is not so demanding as the sessions yesterday. So all the participants contributed to this presentation, and I'm just reporting what happened. We look forward, and most of the time we look forward. And how do we do that? We try to work on integrated tool, and we thought about what are the most relevant questions Macsur scientists should answer concerning scientific advancements, questions of policymakers, and questions of farmers in the regions where we come from. And we also were thinking about what are the next steps that have to be answered concerning science, questions of policymakers, and questions of farmers. So we spent a lot of time in thinking about this. And what I'm going to present now are the ways in order to move on. The trade-end presentations started with Heikki, a pilot in Finland, and I pick out just a few things where I think integration takes place. Crop disease pressure and allocation and the development of RAPs, representative agricultural pathways. Gabriele Dono on livestock heat disease, pests, and the awareness of farmers, how to adjust their production plans. Martin Schönhardt presented another pilot, and he dealt with linking models and the agro-environmental program, and he focused also on biodiversity. Uwe Schneider gave some comments on the presentations I just listed, and his finding was that most of the time we still focus on academia, and in order to make our results valuable for policymakers and farmers, it might be necessary to include social scientists. And a major task he told us to work on during the next 2 years is to validate the economic models. That should be a major task from his perspective. So we went on, and Andrew Barnes already gave us a presentation where farmers' views were integrated in a model analysis, and the rest of his talk dealt with the implementation of rural development policies. Michael reported some results on marginal abatement costs, where he linked together economics, the CGE model, and the consequences for crop producers, oil producers. Anne Biewald presented her work on Finland, on cereals and oilseeds, and she already demonstrated how models can be intercompared. And Christoph Müller, he gave a response to the economist's wish list. And what I found very interesting is that there is a huge amount of data already available that is waiting for economists to come to grab them and to work them and to look at them and to compare it with the other inputs data they have, and economists are very invited to make use of this. And Christoph is going to give a similar presentation this morning in another session. Valentina dealt with perennial fruits and optimal investment decisions. Angelova presented a very new, at least to me, new approach to deal with uncertainty. It's the state contingent approach that's also used in the analysis of future markets and other investment markets. Klaus Mittenzweig showed a very interesting way how we can take a model that exists and to gear it towards integrating uncertainty. And he let us know how that can be done in a piecemeal approach, one step after the other. Waldemar Boja presented achievements on model improvements in Poland. Wojcik presented land use dynamics and environment approach at a very highly technical scale, but he also demonstrated how it can be used to answer real-world problems. And finally, Gabriele Dono dealt with farm awareness on ongoing climate change, and he presented a way how we can think about whether farmers adjust to the ongoing climate change, yes or no, and what are the costs if they do not do it. So these were the presentations, and I hope there was something interesting for you in. I've mentioned only the person who is presenting talk, but in all cases, at least 2, 3, or 4 other people were involved in preparing the presentation. But I have only 15 minutes time. So, next thing is what are the upcoming events in Sweden? There is one workshop on 24th of September in Vienna where we try to bring together ACMID and TRADEM. So it's the economics parts of ACMID and TRADEM. And the workshop will be organized by YASA, BOKU, and BIFO. And in probably 2 weeks there will be a call of paper and instructions how you can participate. And the interesting thing about that is this workshop will be linked to the annual meeting of the Austrian Association of Agricultural Economists that is dealing with food safety, food security, and food sovereignty. And the papers that are presented there can then be submitted to a journal. After the Vienna workshop, there will be the last workshop of TRADEM in Norway. It is organized from a TRADEM perspective, but we would really like to welcome also people from ProfM and LifeM, because I think this is the crown jewel where we bring together all the efforts in order to prepare for the final Congress that will be made in April. And at that stage, we should be able to select those presentations that are then put into front of everything. The steering committee is Övind Hobe, Klaus Mittenzweig, Flo Brauer, and Martin Banse, and we also have people from ProfM and LifeM in the steering committee. This is the timeline, and remember the date, 25th to 27th November. A perfect working environment, rain outside, dark outside, and no distraction, no amenities, just work. So, I'm not yet finished, so people do not stand up yet and leave the room, so I go on. We talk now about dissemination.
our dissemination plan covers various channels. Of course, the most important for us is the journals, and I've grayed out one, the German Journal of Agricultural Economics. There are already 6 papers or so more or less finished in the review process. The next opportunity to present to published papers are the annals of the Austrian Association of Agricultural Economics. So if there are any sociological teams around here, they can publish there. I think this is a good opportunity. And Davide Biaggi is the editor of Biobased and Applied Economics. And I think he is also very happy if he gets submissions of analyses that integrate across disciplines. And there are other interdisciplinary journals with high reputation. Katharina Helming knows a lot about them. There will be a special issue in Empirica. It's an economics journal, and it focuses on Europe. And Floor has made already the arrangement to publish a book by Elsevier in 2015. And the idea is to
is common.
So this is for tomorrow. Because we will give you the indication about the field trees in the bus. So don't this kind of for tomorrow, the meeting is not here. There will be two meetings. One is one is for the Italian partnership, and the other is for the project. And both are at the Faculty of Agriculture. Its Italian name is Facoltà di Agricoltura.